Hey everyone, finally getting around to doing my Highlander Priest guide, so let's jump right into it. I'll first go over the 30 cards that I'm kind of running on ladder right now, or at least what I was. I haven't really been playing it too much lately with GM prep. And then I'll go through what cards I think are kind of core to the deck, and then some stuff you can tech in based on what you're seeing on ladder. After that, I'll explain a bit about what you want to be mulliganing for, and just kind of explaining how the deck plays out. So let's start off. Holy Smite, single target removal, pretty good. Can't go face anymore, but that's fine. Renew, pretty good. You run it in 2 of Priest. Ooze, a lot of warriors and demon hunters on ladder, and it even hits the odd hunter sometimes. Pretty good. Bone Shroud Brawler. I've been asked a lot why I'm running Bone Shroud Brawler instead of Injured Tolvir. Bone Shroud Brawler contests the warrior's Warmaul Challenger. If you play this on turn 2, they can't coin Warmaul Challenger you, because the Warmaul Challenger, I mean they can, but this trades with the Challenger. The Challenger hits it once, this gains 2 attack. It hits it again, it gains another 2 attack, and in the end they kill each other. So it's a pretty good tool to have really against warrior. It's also another taunt, which 12 years as well. But with the prevalence of more warriors than demon hunters right now, I thought Bone Shroud Brawler is better for ladder. But I mean, change it as you see fit. Penance, pretty good. You run in Gallican Priest as well. Veil Weaver, same thing. You don't have that many single target removal spells because we are a Highlander deck. But I feel even just jamming, first of all, you can just jam it as a 2-drop, but second of all, this paired together with one spell is just fine. You know, it's just something to throw on the board, get a little bit more value out of. Death, Pain, pretty standard stuff. Thought Steal, same thing. Zephyrus, obviously it's a Highlander deck, you want that in there. Apotheosis, again, good in Gallican Priest, and can help you swing back games here as well, basically. Breath of the Infinite, AoE, Dark Prophecy. A lot of people don't like this card, and I saw some people testing it in Gallican Priest as well. But I think it's just really really good in almost every single matchup. The tempo you gain off of this is actually insane, and I was trash talking this a lot when it first came out, but it's actually a really good card. There's a lot of high rolly 2-drops you can get as well, but just a big statted minion that it's difficult for your opponent to clear is really good. And I found this to be a very good tool against warrior, demon hunter, even in the priest mirror. Just have a big minion that doesn't die. Perhaps you can stick an apotheosis on it, or use your hero power to heal it back up. I found this to be very nice. Some of the high rolls you can get are Millhouse, Injured Tolvir spawns as a 2/9, Morg Artificer is a 2/7 with upside. It can be downside as well, but very very powerful card. Madame Lazul. I really like getting information about my opponent's hands and kind of understanding what they can do, what their game plan is going to be, but it is also just an extra resource, right? It's a value card. I like this a lot. There's not that many 3-drops. Not that you want to just jam Lazul on curve, but you can if that's what your hand looks like. Mind Flayer, Karj, really really not a minion. You can play just on 3 to copy a small minion. You can use it late game in tandem with something like a Death or a Zeph Clear to get a really big minion just for 3 mana. This card is absolutely insane. Shadow Menace, pretty good 2-for-1 card. Can be good against warrior, demon hunter. Good in Priest Mirror when it starts to go late game and you want to steal some of their infiltrators or grave rune minions or whatever. Bone Wraith, taunt, defensive, nice. Amit, really 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 insanely good card in this deck. Even if you don't combo with anything else, just playing it for mana 2/7 is so difficult for so many classes right now in the meta to deal with. Especially when people like Priest aren't running Pain, Hunters aren't running Deadly Shot. They're running Rottenness Drake, but still, it's insane. If they kill it, great. They sunk 7 damage into it, which on turn 4 is a lot. So they either soften up their board, trade away their minions, or they ignore it and you capitalize off of it by playing extra minions to gain health off after that. Really good card. Holy Nova, another AoE. You can't run 2 breaths, and I think we're in a meta where the 2 AoEs are pretty useful, especially against stuff like Demon Hunter, which spawn a lot of X2 minions. Psychopomp, pretty decent. Don't have to hit something super naughty off of it. Obviously you can hit some of the big boys, but even just playing this on curve, fighting for tempo against something is really good. Obviously a really nice high roll is coin High Priest Amit into Psychopomp, really good. Or if something dies, then you play Amit, they leave it, and then you Psychopomp. Oof, it just ends games. Infiltrator, defensive taunt, kind of like a removal tool, pretty good. I do like having some taunts in this deck. A, because they tend to have higher health, difficult to clear through, and then gives you more time to kind of gather resources and I guess get a foothold in the game. But also, I talked about the Psychopomp with the taunts. What else I was going to say? I had a point, but it's gone. It's fine. Harrison Jones. This probably doesn't need to be in the deck, but I really, really like doubling the chances I get weapon removal. It's primarily good against Warrior because they will have more charges on their either Live-Wire Lances or Excaliburs or even the Ankar. They can't swing 3 or 4 times in one turn like Demon Hunter can, and getting 3 or 2 cards drawn from Harrison can really swing a game around, especially when they invest the mana into the weapon. You remove it, gain more resources, and put something on the board. It's really nice. Also, if you're fighting, toe-to-toe against Demon Hunter and they pre-equip a Warglaives, bam, Harrison, and draw 3 cards. Insane. Obviously, against Demon Hunter, it's not always easy to get the Harrison out because they can equip the Warglaives, swing a few times, kill off some minions, and then there's only 1 charge left, or sometimes no charges left. And because of that, Harrison can be a little bit worse. Still fine against something like Rogue on Ladder. Even just Harrison their dagger, their hero power, can be nice. Get a couple of cards off of that. And against Hunter, it can also be useful. Sand Water Bearer, really, really good. Not too many 5s in the deck, especially if you don't like Harrison. Pretty good. 5/5/5, restore 5 health. Has to be dealt with because if it sticks around, it heals you over time. Pretty good card. Kronk's and Gala package, despite not having any invokes, this is just your value pack, right? Kronk's to either pull out Gala so you can start generating more value if you run out of resources, or vice versa, you play Galakron and then Kronk's to use a devastation, but pretty low commitment package, which is still fine. You also don't have that many 6 drops, so even a 6 mana 6/6 is just fine on curve with the effect of drawing Galakron. Seamet, some people have not been running these in their lists. Not that there's that many Highlander lists, and I'm not quite sure if it fits in the deck. Maybe something else could be better suited, but I've been kind of enjoying it. Against the odd Druid on ladder, which has been becoming more popular, getting to Seamat and just Divine Shield Windfurying it can help end games because you can't always deal with all their, Ysera dragons, all the exotic Mount Cellar boards. So eventually, after you clear 1 or 2, you will need to end the game, maybe even before you clear one or 2. So Seamat can help against something like that. Skullful Dragon, pretty big booty, hard to kill, bit more value as well, which is nice. It's an extra dragon to activate Breath, but you don't really care if Breath is active that much, really. You have 2 dragons. It's not active that often, but generally I find if you have board, you don't need to use the Breath, and if you don't have board, then use the Breath. Anyways, Soulmare, super nutty card, really powerful, especially used together with Ahmed. Obviously, you can't use them together unless you randomly get Fate Weavers and other invokes off of Galakron, or you Thoughtsteal or Madame Lazul invokes from your opponent's decks. You can't use them together unless you already have Ahmed on the board, which happens a reasonable amount of the time considering Ahmed's very difficult to deal with. Morazan, really insane card, has to be included. And Dragon Queen, obviously, is Dragon Queen. You kind of have to include this as well. And yeah, those are the 30 cards. Let me now look over what's core. So everything you see here is are cards that I think just have to be in the deck. And 20 cards, I guess, is it's actually not that much for what you consider core. A lot of other decks we're looking at, stuff like Demon Hunter Warrior tend to have 25-ish cards that are core or staple. So I think 20 is actually really interesting, but it kind of makes sense in a Highlander deck because you have all one of, so a lot of them will be sort of tech cards that you can take in and out based on what you want to bet against. Most of the single target removal is here. Most of the really important legendaries are in here. Obviously, Zeph, Dragon Queen, Warzon, Soulmare, the Gala package. Ahmed, I think, is core. Mind Flayer is core. The 2... I didn't actually include Holy Nova. So Breath I found to be obviously more useful because it's cheaper and it comes out earlier when you can actually deal with the Demon Hunter's board. But I don't often use both AoEs in a game unless it gets really grindy. But again, if you had to choose one and you're trying to cut back on removal and want to be more proactive, I would probably keep Breath over Holy Nova. I think Shadow Madness is also core. Apotheosis, one of the only ways to heal back to heal in the deck. Renew, because of its flexibility. You don't have that many 5s. You do need a general sort of curve, and I kept most of the powerful curve cards in here because I think they're probably the best minions that priests have for these respective mana costs. So So I'll chill here for a few seconds. I mean, I'm sure you guys can pause the video and just kind of pick each ones, but I've already talked about all the cards. So you can just snapshot this, take a look. Obviously, you don't have to agree with me. If you don't like one of these cards or don't have it, take it out, put something else in. I'm not going to go over cards that you can really substitute because I really think these 20 cards are actually just core. I'll go over tech cards that you can include instead, but for substitutions, just think of what you're taking out and what you could try to put back in to replace it, right? Like if I don't have Veil Weaver, it is a bit of a value card, but it's importantly a 2-drop as well. I don't always save this to get value out of it. Sometimes I just jam it as a 2-drop in the tempo matchup. So if you're taking out a 2-drop, try putting in another 2-drop. It doesn't have to be value oriented. And I would kind of use that mindset whenever you don't have one of these cards. Like if you don't have Waterhoof Bearer, sure, throw in something, either another heal card or another 5-drop that you want in the deck. All right, let's go over tech cards. Let's start off with aggro techs. These are cards that you could consider putting in if you're facing a lot of Warriors, Demon Hunters. I wouldn't even consider, Warrior and Demon Hunter. I wouldn't even consider Hunter and Rogue as aggro decks. So I don't really think those don't really count. You can consider Face Hunter, I guess, as an aggro deck, even though that's not that popular on ladder. But these are the cards I would kind of include. I've been running Shadow Word Pain, but some people suggested I can try using Forbidden Words as well. A lot of the time what you use Pain on can also be used with Words, and it's very similar in terms of the mana cost spent on that, but the upside is that Forbidden Words can be used on something a bit bigger. It can be used as a second death, for example. Granted, it's going to cost more, but you can use Forbidden Words instead of that. You could also run both if you want to be more removal oriented, but I've been trying to keep the deck pretty tempo heavy, because we're in a meta where it's very, very important to not fall super far behind, because even if you can reactively clear stuff, the decks that we're up against will just continuously push more damage just from hand or with burst spells or cards. Like in Hunter, for example, they can just down and tame a brand. They can use Stormhammer to just hit you over and over again, even if you're moving their board. Demon Hunter has so much damage from hand, and Warrior can do huge combos from hand as well. So I think it's a very important meta to stay on the board and not try to be too reactionary. It's good to have reactionary cards, especially with cheap spells like Death that's in the deck. Having a 2-mana swing like that against a huge minion is very powerful. But again, you need some sort of tempo staple to be able to fight right now. There's a couple of weapon techs here, Ooze and Harrison. These aren't necessarily core. I include them because we're in a very weapon-heavy meta, and because of that, I think Ooze at least should be in the deck. Harrison, if you don't have it or don't want it, fine, cut it. I've included some other options you can have as well, such as Frozen Shadow Weaver, which helps a lot against Demon Hunter, but same thing, it can help against Warrior. And the usefulness about Shadow Weaver is that it doesn't have to be a weapon tech. It can just be used to stop big minions from attacking for a turn, either if you need time to set up for Soul Mirror or to, play outside of lethal and hope for a top deck card or something. It's a lot more useful, but let me rephrase this. It's more flexible than Ooze and Harrison. As I spoke about earlier, Bone Churro Brawler versus Tol'Vir. If you're seeing more rogues, you could include Tol'Vir, because Tol'Vir can't get seal faded on curve. And also the benefit of using Tol'Vir is that if you don't have a follow-up for your 2-drop, you can just heal it with your hero power. Sometimes it dies anyways, so it's But again, I'm just giving you options for 2-drops that you could run for aggro. Some people started testing Vile Fiend, I noticed, in 2 of Priest and Galakron Priest. And I thought that kind of makes sense here as well. It's a bit delayed in terms of when it comes online, obviously, but it's a guaranteed target for Apotheosis, which is less important in this deck because you only have one. You're not guaranteed to get the combo off, but I think it can be a potential tech card if you want to be better against aggro. I've talked about Pain Words. This is another 3-drop. We don't have that many 3s in the deck. This against Demon Hunter can be pretty useful. I should note that this deck is not... I'll talk about the matchups later, actually. It can be used against Quest Warlock. It can be used against... Yeah, it's mainly good against Demon Hunter and Warlock. The other classes right now don't really rely on the hero power too much. But it is another 3-drop that you can include. Dark Prophecy... Wait, did I say this was core? No, I didn't say it was core. Okay, good. It's a really, really good card, but if we end up going into super slow meta, I could see cutting this for some more value-oriented cards, because ultimately 2-drops, while this extra health benefit is great and helps you fight for board, it's not going to be, an overwhelming minion unless you get something like Millhouse. But definitely very, very good in every single tempo matchup right now, which is pretty much everything except the Priest Mirror, which even the Priest Mirror is still pretty tempo-oriented. So this could almost be moved to core for this meta, but I think in general, if we're going to use this deck and kind of evolve with it through the meta as it changes through next expansions or so, maybe this could get cut, I guess. And Holy Nova I was talking about earlier, I don't think you need two AoE. I would still like to run two AoEs now, but if you feel like you don't need double AoE, then I would cut Nova over Breath. And these are pretty much the aggro techs. Most of these are kind of weapon oriented and targeting very specific classes, but that's kind of what the meta is, so that's why these cards are here. Let's go to value techs. Now, I get asked this a lot on ladder. Why aren't you running, invokes in your deck? Well, invokes are great. They give you, value, obviously. And for priest, the priest invoke activates Galakron's hero power, which is add a random priest minion to your hand. So you play a minion, you get a minion in your hand. Cool. The thing is, outside of Shield of Galakron, these are kind of not really super temp oriented. Time Rip's fine, Disciple's fine. If there was more space in the deck, I would include Disciple, but the 30 card list is pretty tight, and there's not a whole lot of wiggle room, which is why I don't include Disciple. Shield I could consider including anyways as an extra taunt and value card if you really need it. Time Rip, as I've said before, it's good to have reactive cards, but spending 5 mana without developing anything isn't really useful. It can be in a very slow matchup, but I prefer having cards like Death, Pain, Forbidden Words if you want to include that. And because from these statements, I don't want to run Disciple or Time Rip, there's not really point in running one single invoke card. It just doesn't make sense. I specifically excluded Fate Weaver from these techs because if you're running, first of all, these are the only 3 invokes you can really run because Devoted Maniac is not a card you want to be running right now. It's just some invokes you can use it with, some class invokes you can use it with in Shaman, for example, because it actually generates tempo. And even a Warlock, it spawns to 1/1s, but different story. In Priest, a 4 mana 2/2 rush just isn't really worth it. It doesn't matter if it gives you a card. So if you can't run Devoted Maniac in this list, you're running 3 invokes at the most. First of all, that's already a 3-card package that there really isn't space for, unless you start really cutting to some other things in the deck. And then how often are you going to have 2 invokes and Fate Weaver? It's only going to be active enough when the games go super, super long. And at that point, it's not going to be the majority of games. And I think this deck is already, the only matchup that is the Galakron Priest matchup. And at that point, I think we have enough value in the deck without needing some extra invokes. Thoughtsteal, I considered this a value tech and not really a core card because it technically doesn't give you tempo, but it's a really, really good card. And I think it's almost core, if not core. I kind of excluded it because it does fit under value, but pretty good card. But you can get run over if you play this on 2 and your opponent just starts developing minions and you can't answer it. So it's not something you normally keep in your opening hand anyways. It's kind of like a late game value thing, and because of that, I include it as value. But still, I would probably include this in your deck. And let me be clear. Outside of the 20 core cards, I'm not saying if you want to be good against aggro, you throw all these 10 or 11 aggro cards in. I'm saying these are options you have. So you're going to want to put a mix of aggro techs and value techs on top of the core cards to complete your Highlander deck. I will include in the link in the description below my code for ladder, but if you want to mess around and try to build your own Highlander Priest, go for it, but just know that these are some of the options you can look at and not all the cards you want to jam in there, which is why I'm saying that I would probably include Thoughtsteal in your deck regardless of how you're taking it. Madame Lazul, I mentioned we don't have that many 3-drops in the deck, but and I mentioned we don't have many 3-drops in the deck, but Lazul is not really a great 3-drop in terms of fighting for board. So this is cuttable. It's a really powerful card, and you can get some really nutty stuff off of it in a lot of different matchups. You can figure out what your opponents have left in their hand in very breakneck aggro decks like Demon Hunter or Hunter, and you can kind of see, all right, well, these are the cards left in their hand. Let me plan out how to beat that. Or you wake up and say, guess I'm dead. Unlucky. If you have slots, I would include Lazul, but it's not necessary. It's more of a value card. Little Pair of Scoundrel I saw people recommending, and I thought that was pretty fine. We basically run Renew in this deck as a spell generator, so I can see running Volpera for that. Some people have been running Spellkin as well, which I think is pretty fine. It's also another 5-drop, which we don't have too many of, and if you look at the Priest 1-mana spells, they're actually really, really good. They're really good. Embalming Ritual, that one's not great. Inner Fire's not great. Smite's pretty good. Vision's okay, it gives you some more value. Radiance, one of the things that the deck lacks is direct healing outside of stuff like Renew, Penance, and Apotheosis. So some flash heal, burst heal is nice, and obviously Renew. So the pool's pretty small that you're likely to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spells. You're really happy getting 1, 2 and a half, and you're sometimes okay getting this one. Inner Fire you can kind of make use of. I've spoken that we have a lot of defensively statted minions, so Inner Fire can be useful. And Ritual as well for 1 mana, just to give a minion reborn. Something like a Bone Wraith would be... Actually, it wouldn't work on Bone Wraith very well, but putting on a slightly bigger minion could help. I've talked about the Invokes. Seaman I haven't included in Core. It is a little slow, and I feel like some of the games I lose are only because my hand's way too expensive, and because of that I could see cutting some of the top end. But Seaman's pretty flexible, and it's been included in a lot of Highlander decks, so I kind of feel it would still be fine in this deck, but I would consider it more of a value card than an aggro tech. And I guess not all tech cards have to be value or aggro oriented, but just for the purpose of this video, I'm just explaining which ways you can lean, basically. Skeletal Dragon, pretty good card, but also pretty slow. If the meta gets way too aggro, then I mean I could see cutting this, but it's okay. I don't feel like this deck has too much top end, so I do like having a couple of big hitters at the end. Excellent. So we've gone through that. Let me talk a bit about the matchups. Most of the stuff we're seeing on ladder right now are warriors, various either bomb or aggro, pain and rage, whatever they call it, or egg warrior. We see Demon Hunter, which is mainly just tempo now. People aren't running OTK anymore. Quest Warlock, we've been seeing some Highlander Hunter, the odd rogues and druids. I feel like this deck is really, really, really good against Warrior and Demon Hunter. Not great against Hunter. Struggles against Rogue as well. It's been actually pretty okay against Druid, but you can get blown out because you don't have that many reactive spells, so you need to get ahead while they're ramping and make sure you can stick stuff on the board. And one of the main ways you get ahead is either Thought Stealing or Madame Lazuling their ramp and keeping up with them in terms of mana, or getting an Amit down or some sort of Psychopomp early that helps you kind of stick board and lets you preemptively set up your board in a way that lets you react with their Glowfly Swarm or their Exotic Mount Seller, so you don't have to just death and hope you don't die to Roar. This has a little bit of a better matchup against Quest Warlock, but I still wouldn't say we're favored. There's a lot of really annoying sticky minions that Galakrond Priest doesn't normally run, so you will keep generating threats. One of the problems with Galakrond Priest against Quest Warlock is that you just kind of pass for a while and you don't have that much in terms of threatening tempo, so they can just tap and do their game plan as they see fit. But with this deck, you can actually pressure them. I've killed people on ladder playing Quest Warlock on turn 6 or 7. I mean, sometimes Dark Skies doesn't clear if you have an Amit plus another minion, or if you have, you know, it's pretty much Amit. But if you know, what's the word? If you snowball a couple of early minions and it gets out of Dark Skies range, it can be difficult. And sometimes they don't always have Dark Skies, and they don't want to be using Moarg and Nether Breath to clear minions when they do need to eventually kill you with the burst. So I wouldn't say the Quest Warlock's favored, but I think this is better against Quest Warlock than Galakrond Priest is. Mainly, I've just been winning this by playing it like a sort of mid-range deck, which we kind of see other Highlander decks have adopted. I mean, that's kind of what Highlander does, right? Outside of Highlander Warrior, which even that deck kind of played like a mid-range deck, every other Highlander deck is some sort of hybrid between like tempo mid-range and a little bit of not a control aspect, but more of a bit of a value aspect. If we look at Highlander Rogue, Highlander Hunter, they can be very aggressive in terms of curve, but they can also they also have some staying power in terms of late game threats. And this does a very similar thing. The benefit of Priest right now is because the benefit of Priest is the prevalence of Warrior and Demon Hunter, and because I think the tool set that Priest has is so good against those two classes right now, which are very popular in the meta, that it'll just be very successful. Yeah, so play for tempo. Obviously remove stuff when you can, but be proactive. I think that's how you have to succeed with this deck. I'll talk a little bit about mulligans now. Now, pretty much everything after Harrison, you're always going to throw back in the deck, except for Galakron or Kronks. You can consider keeping these in the Priest Mirror because you will need value to kind of win the game. But even in the Priest Mirror, it's good to be ahead on board to start off with, and you don't want to just pass, and then Galakron. So I would consider keeping, I mean, you still should keep Galakron, but that's not the only thing that's important in the Priest Mirror. For all the other decks, you do want to kind of toss everything south of Harrison Jones, and probably even Infiltrator. Everything above 4 mana here is what you can consider keeping based on the matchup. Against Demon Hunter, against Hunter, you can consider keeping Smite, Penance, Pain, some of the early single target removal spells that help you deal with their early board. As you note, we don't have that many 1 or 2 mana minions. We don't start getting on the board till turn 3 or 4. So having some of these early removal spells to deal with their early minions is very beneficial. Yes, against the weapon classes, you can keep Ooze. Otherwise, if it's a tempo matchup, you don't want to keep 2 drops. You want to keep Bone Chewer Brawler. You can keep Veil Waver even just to throw it as a 2 mana minion. I've said this before. You don't have to get value off of it. You need to stay on the board, fight for board so that you don't fall behind. Because I mean, the deck can come back from being behind, but you'd rather not. You'd rather just be ahead, stay head to head, and then eventually get a power spike with Zeph or Alex or something like that, Soulmare. Against Warrior, I frequently keep Pain. I sometimes keep Death as well for a Blood Boil Brute. Against Rogue on the Coin, you can consider keeping Death. Zeph is a keep in every matchup. Against Demon Hunter, I would keep Breath of the Infinite. I would keep Prophecy against every tempo matchup. Warrior, Demon Hunter, Rogue. I would almost keep this in every matchup too, actually. Yeah, I probably would, Dark Prophecy. Lazul, probably never a keep. Mind Flayer, a keep against tempo heavy decks that you can just play it out on turn 3, copy minion. Shadow Menace I've started tossing a bit more. I used to keep it a lot against Warrior. If you know you're against an Egg Warrior where they can do, in-range copy girl stuff, you can consider keeping Shadow Menace. It's good against Terran Gorfine, but people have started moving more towards Bomb Warrior to beat the Quest Warlocks, and they've started using Korkrons and Grom instead of eggs to try and burst out Priest. So Madness has kind of lost its usefulness in terms of keeping it in the mulligan because it won't find a use until later on in the game, generally. Good to keep against Demon Hunter, though. Can be useful against normal Hunter as well. I'm just going down the list and making notes. Amit, I think, is also a keep in almost every single matchup. Even on the play, it's so good. I cannot stress this enough. I keep this in almost every single matchup. I'm trying to think if there's any exception to that, and I'm not sure there is. It's just so good. Even on the play with nothing else, it's so good. It's insane. And then after that, I wouldn't consider keeping too many other things. Psychopomp, I only keep if I have Amit, and even that only on coin Amit into Psychopomp you can consider doing. Harrison, I only keep against Warrior if I have some other cards I'm keeping already that help me fight for board. If I have something like a Pain or a Bone Chewer Brawler, then I might keep Harrison with that because they will try to get their weapons. But by itself, I don't generally keep Harrison Jones. I would normally keep Penance and Smite against Warrior as well. The only minion they want to develop that dies to that is Bomb Wrangler, and they don't normally keep Bomb Wrangler by itself, so why would you keep the spells that only answer Bomb Wrangler? You're not going to use this on a Sky Raider. If they tempoed a Risky Skipper, then that would be a reason to, but most people aren't really tempoing out Risky Skippers, so I wouldn't really be worried about keeping these two. Against Warrior anyways, still good against Demon Hunter and Hunter. I think other than that, that's about it for the mulligan guide. I mean, in any deck you're playing, try to think of what your opponent's going to be doing for the first 2 to 4 turns, and think about the cards you have in your hand at the start of the mulligan phase. Are these going to help you either further your game plan in the early game or help you deal with your opponent's game plan? And all the kind of tips I've been explaining with the cards you should keep in specific matchups are because I expect my opponents to do X or Y at the start of the game, which is why I said against Demon Hunter you're going to want early removal to deal with their Battle Fiends, the Battle Mages, Satyr Overseers, etc. Alright, so that's the mulligan. I'm going to do just like a quick 5-minute review of a couple of points I've spoken about already, but applied in a game of Grandmasters. So this was me against Nalgadon in week 6 of Grandmasters. It was the game 4. I was playing Highlander Priest and against a Warrior. This week I had the audacity to leave Warrior up because I thought I had a lineup that was good against it, which to be fair I did. But I eventually stopped leaving Warrior up after that week anyways. So I start off, this is my hand. Ahmet, Zephyrus, Smite, Prophecy. Now, I've said Prophecy, I keep in almost every single matchup. Cool. Tempo matchup. Ahmed, I said I keep in almost every single matchup. Cool. Zeph, you keep in almost every single matchup. Cool. So my only consideration here is, first of all, am I okay keeping all 3 of these cards together? Zeph is just a good oh shit button, and you can just use it for tempo. You'll see people in other Highlander decks do the same thing, right? How often have you seen a Highlander Rogue or Hunter just go Zephyrus backstab on turn 2? You just want it because it helps fill a void, and Zephyrus will always do that for you, except when it doesn't, and then let's ignore that. But I'm fine keeping this. I have a turn 3, I have a turn 4. I don't really have 1 or 2 mana minions. If I need to do something, I can Zeph. And because I don't have 1 or 2 mana minions or more removal, I thought, you know what, heck, let's keep a Smite too. But in this case, I could even consider tossing a Smite. Let's go through this real quick. You'll see me looking over at his deck list, and I'm thinking, I mean, these cards are pretty good. And this is, this is a 4 keep. So that's just talking about the mulligan phase. Okay. Game's progressed a little bit, a couple turns have passed, and now Nalgadon has a Sky Raider and an Armor Smith on the board. So I've drawn pretty expensive cards at this point. I guess it's kind of hard to see at the screen there, but I'll read out my hand. High Priest Ahmed, Zephyrus, Holy Smite, Dark Prophecy, Galakrond, and Kronks. Now, it's turn 2. Don't have a play, that's fine. Warriors don't always develop stuff on board. The most they can really do on the first couple turns, outside of a Naked Skipper, which most people don't do, is play a Sky Raider, and then if they get a Pirate off of it, then they play that. Or they can tempo out an Armor Smith like this, where they feel like that they do need to pressure the Priest out, especially when late game Soul Mirror is... the threat of Soul Mirror means that Armor Smith can be a risk later on in the game. So with Nalgadon developing 2 minions, I feel like waiting and playing Dark Prophecy on 3 is a little bit too slow. So because of that, I decide to coin out Dark Prophecy. Zeph won't really help me too much here. I don't want to backstab a 1/2. So I coin out a Dark Prophecy, knowing that I don't have a follow play anyways, but I can use my hero power to heal the minion back up, because whatever health it's going to have, the average minion you're going to get off of this is like a 2/6-ish minion. 2/6. It won't be exactly a 2/6, but you can expect to get a 2/6 or better generally off of this. Sometimes you get unlucky and you don't, but let's back up 2 seconds. So I thought, all right, he has an Armor Smith, a Sky Raider. He can deal 2 damage. Maybe he has a weapon from hand, a Warmaul Challenger. But if he Warmaul Challengers this, it's going to really deal a lot of damage to the Warmaul Challenger, which means I can probably Smite to clean it up. And if he doesn't Warmaul Challenger, I can just trade and start healing it, and that helps me fight for board. So even though I don't have follow plays outside of my hero power and maybe a Smite, which doesn't quite line up on the board yet, I think that it's worth taking using the coin now instead of just trying to play a 3-drop into a 4-drop, because I can easily get run over. And against Warriors specifically, when they're trying to make a lot of early tempo plays, Zeph can't always help you clear that when they go, Enrage Copy Girl, Bloodstorm Mercenary, sorry. It's not always... they generate boards that's not always easy to deal with Zephyrus, so I thought it's a good time to just try to fight for tempo instead of waiting. Obviously, Monarch Artificer is kind of cute, because with the Smite in hand, that means I can just deal 6 to something. What were the other options real quick? Yeah, Cho was interesting, but not really what I wanted to do. And the other option was Dwarven Archaeologist, which would be a 2/6, as I said. But I thought in this case, Artificer, the only downside is what, Enrage, but it's hard for him to enrage my guy at that point in the game because it's not going to do anything. And it also plays around him enraging his own minion because it'll deal 2. So I just picked the bigger booty minion, which also in tandem with the Smite in my hand ended up being pretty useful. Now exactly what I actually did end up using Smite. How did he... Anyways, whatever. Turn 4. He had a live wire lance equipped. He killed my Artificer. What else is going on here? It's going into my turn 4. And I'm trying to figure out how to pick apart this board. I could Smite. I could Zeph. Pain doesn't really line up nicely here, right? So what happened earlier was that I played Mind Flayer Karj from the top of my deck on his Armor Smith just to get something on the board because that was his biggest minion at the time. He dealt with the first half of it. He dealt with the Mohawk Artificer, so I have an Armor Smith left. Now I have to figure out, okay, how am I dealing with this board? I can be reactive. I can play Zeph Vis here. I can clean up an Armor Smith. But I thought, all right, well, Zeph can be a lot more useful later as well. Is there anything else I could... Or also, is this board even threatening enough for me to do that? And I think the answer was no. I think this is still a good chance to get High Priest Amit online. If he trades 7 damage to it, he's heavily softening up his board. With the Smite in my hand, I can clean up the 4/4 if that trades into the Amit. It's still difficult for him to deal with that. And if he deals with the Amit, I gain a ton of armor off on the Armor Smith. And this is what I'm saying, that even in this matchup where you want to be proactive, keeping Amit is so insane because their early board still has to trade several times into Amit to actually clear it. So I do forego the Zeph line here or Smite to clean up the 4/4, and I thought, all right, let me develop the Amit. And this is going back to what I've been saying, fight for board. If you have to and you need to play around, lethal stuff, sure, be reactive, but when possible, be proactive as long as it doesn't mean you can get blown out by something crazy. All right. And finally, this is several turns later on in the game where, let me back up just a little bit. Wow, I really thought about that. Pretty healthy, 34 health, don't really need to be concerned. My opponent has the Ysera on the board. I cannot deal with the Ysera. I've used Death already. Maybe if I had a Death, I could go Apotheosis Death, but I don't have that. So I'm trying to figure out, all right, how do I deal with this? Now, people often see Priest as sort of a control deck, and it kind of is, but this Highlander Priest doesn't have to be control deck. Even though I am in Galakrond mode, I should still just fight for board. I've noticed that at this point, Nelgadon was kind of struggling to stick enough minions to kind of kill me, and I've been sticking onto the board up until this point. Obviously, he has the Ysera now, which I can't deal with. Well, if I can't deal with it, I'm not going to just hero power and try to find answers to it because there's not really that many answers I can get. So let's just make a big board and start pushing for lethal. My opponent's at 21. I've seen him use an Armor Smith already. I have some reads on what he has in his hand based off the Madame Lazul. So I said, all right, 8/8, let's go. Hit him in the head. I know he runs Deathwing, but if he plays Deathwing into this, it kind of damages his own board too, and that answers my problem. Otherwise, how does he deal with an 8/8? A Blood Boil Brute would help, but still, it makes... I force him to be reactive instead of proactive. And while the warrior deck can do that, it's easier for me on my side as the priest to be proactive instead of reactive because I just don't have those reactive tools right now. And eventually, making these sort of big tempo lines will lead to me... Actually, I'll talk about this next turn as well because it was kind of the same thing. None of my reactive cards really do much here. I top deck an Alex. He hasn't dealt with my Kronks or my Lazul. Same thing. I could try to kill this Ysera with... So it's a 12 health. I have 9 health. I can Shadow Madness the 1/1 Lackey and Apotheosis my Kronks. I clear the Ysera. Great. But that just evens the board. My opponent's still going to develop more stuff. I know he has Corsair Cash in hand. I know he has Laughing Sister. I know he runs Grom and Deathwing. Why expend my entire board to try and deal with his Ysera when I can just make a bigger tempo play knowing that he wasn't able to deal with my board last turn? So because of that, I went for the Alex. Dragons I got were okay. Nosdormu, 8/8, sure. Aeon Reaver was kind of cute as well. I know he had an extra Ysera card, so I eventually ended up Aeon Reavering the 1/1 instead of the 7/12. People lost their shit over this. But you could deal 7 damage. The reason I did this on the Kobold Lackey is because I wanted to just push face. I didn't want to trade anything. So I wanted to push face. Now, knowing he could have Ysera Awakens in hand, if I leave that lackey up, he can trade the 6/6, Ysera awakens, kill a 7/7, and then with one other card, maybe a brute or something else, he could clear the board. So I thought, all right, let's make my board as difficult as possible to deal with, and that's why I also tempoed out the Aeon Reaver. So if I'm going to tempo it out anyways, why should I deal 7 damage to that when I should just make my board more difficult to deal with? Same thing, try to be proactive. You don't always have to be reactive. Obviously, if you can kill all your opponent's stuff and they draw their whole deck and they have nothing left, great, you win. But you don't have to play it like a control deck. In fact, I think you should play more like a mid-range deck when possible. And eventually next turn I have lethal because he doesn't end up clearing the board. So, that is the Highlander Priest Guide. I tried to pull some more videos for you, but I'm not allowed to stream a whole Grandmaster's game, so I just highlighted some points in there that I've been trying to push throughout the guide. Focus on your mulligans, play for tempo as much as possible. Yeah, that's the big thing. Just play for tempo as much as possible. And the mulligans, you'll kind of get a hang for it as you start to play the deck more and realize, all right, this was actually really good in this scenario. Maybe I should keep this more often, etc. So yeah, deck list below. If you have any questions, feel free to jam them in the comments. Also, my Twitter and Twitch are below. Shoot me a follow there to get notifications on when I do tournaments or streams or whatever. Otherwise, yeah, subscribe here as well. That would be very, very helpful. Thanks. Otherwise, have a good one. See you in the next video.